Okay, we're live.
Okay. Well, welcome everyone to Book Club. We're going to be discussing News of the World, which is by Paulette Jiles. It's a nice, it's referred to as a quiet novel, which I'm not sure why they call it a quiet novel. But it was a real enjoyable story, a surprise for me. I've not read this author before. And if you haven't read the story, it's about a man who goes around Texas reading the news of the world. He uses papers from London, New York, Chicago, even Milwaukee, and he reads stories, some fun and happy and some more serious news. And he has been offered, someone has asked him to take a child to San Antonio because he's from there and he knows the territory. And so she had been a captive of the Kiowa Indians, and for 4 years she was taken captive. Her parents were killed when she was 4 or 6, and it's now been 4 years, and she's lost her language, or German language that she had before, and any English, and she just knows the Kiowa. Am I saying it right? Kiowa?
No, Kiowa.
Kiowa. Thanks. I said I was going to ask Google to pronounce it, but went in and went out of my head. So that's good about when you're reading, you don't have to have the pronunciations of, you just read. But when you're talking, you got to know it. So, and this is right after the Civil War and all the problems that were happening in the world after the Civil War. So I really enjoyed it. I know, Nancy, you kind of gave us a little fear of it. Did you enjoy it after you got into it?
I really don't like it. I think it's totally politically incorrect. I'll be really surprised if that Tom Hanks movie actually gets released, because I thought it was so one-sided and so cowboys versus Indians, stereotypical, that I hated the book. If it had really been about the news of the world and what he did reading the news, I think it'd be a really good story. But somehow it morphed into this captive Indian, and the Indians were being bad, and I really did not enjoy it at all.
Nancy, did you not? I disagree with you. I think that it was timely. I think that some of the minor characters, such as the woman, I believe her name was Dora. She was the wife of the fiddler. She's the one who finally accepts the child, and this child is, I'm going to use our terminology, in post-traumatic stress, and the fact that this child is not accepted at all, but this Dora accepts her, as does Captain Kidd. And the process that happens between the captain and Joanna, or whatever her name becomes, I thought was incredible. They learn to trust each other. And I don't see that it's one-sided. She was captured by the Indians. The Kiowa were prevalent in that part of Texas at the time, and it was not unusual at all. And I thought that, just disagree with you, I thought that it was very timely. I thought it brought out all kinds of issues of acceptance, issues of tolerance. I
just thought we should have had the Kiowa perspective as to what did the German family do that prompted the Kiowas to come, and
family took their land,
of their nomadic lifestyle, really, and how the
but it wasn't about the Kiowa. It was about the bonding between this girl and the captain. And the Kiowa were secondary.
I think what it was about these two different, the Kiowa, her viewpoint was the Kiowa, she was this, and the norm, and how they bonded together. So yeah, it wasn't about the Kiowa particular, it was about two different worlds meeting and trusting each other. It could have been an African American. I mean, I think it was, she just chose this. And just the travels and how they worked together, and the lawlessness of Texas at that time, and how they, worked together. And the Kiowa weren't the bad people here. It was all these other people that interfered with their travels and things like that. And
The Kiowa weren't faultless. They did kidnap the kid.
well, yeah, but that was 4 years ago. That wasn't during the book, that wasn't part of the book. The part of the book was them traveling and having this man realize that the people that he was giving her to weren't worthy of her, and how important she was, and how she deserved to have a good life. And these people were not going to give her a good life.
Because
I think this is a true Western, and we've not ever read a Western novel. I mean, I'm not into the Westerns. We have patrons that's all they read are Westerns. And I think this whole genre is new for us. Is it new for all of you? Anyone into Westerns?
I thought this was just a snapshot, Nancy, in time. This was this time, and kidnapping, whether it was a German family or whatever the cultural dynamic of the family was, it happened. Trish is right. They stole the land, they came and they took and they tried to take back what was theirs. I agree. I think the book was much more about the relationship between the captain and this girl and how that developed, and surprising to him that he in the end cared so much about her that he would go back and he would assume responsibility for her. I was kind of surprised about that, and I was happy about that because I kind of like happy endings. But I didn't really think too much about whether or not the Kiowa was appropriate here or not, or we should have had more information. I think I have a lot of historical information about the Indians and the local natives and early settlers. So I enjoyed the book. I don't read Westerns, and so I did enjoy the book for that.
And she did a lot of research on the characters and what captive life was like and when they were returned. So it's heavily researched, the book. And there are two characters that are taken from real people, and it's the captain. He is a real, taken from a real character. And Britt, and I can't even remember another character, Britt something. And I don't even remember what he did in the book. There's a couple of things like the guy she ended up marrying.
Her from. That's who we got Joanna from.
Okay.
And
All right, he's a real character, and I'm
Britt
like
Johnson.
Okay, I could not remember for the life of me. I'm like, who is he? And if I was reading an ebook, I could have searched it really quickly, but I read an old-fashioned book, and which is nice. It's small. It was short. The pages are kind of a different tone. The page, it just was a nice book.
I think
It took me a while to get used to her style. I read about her. She's a poet, and that once I knew that, I could kind of get with the flow. But her lack of punctuations when it comes to conversation and all that, it took me probably 50 pages before I got the swing of that and could, read it, let it flow a little bit more.
I love how she brought nature into it, and she always talked about the trees and the bubbling brooks, and I love that part of it.
Well, that part of Texas where she is very beautiful. It's the hill country, and it's incredible. I think Molly's assessment, calling it a snapshot of time of what it is, because Brett Johnson was a black cowboy that was an entity of the time. The Kiowa, she touches on bits and pieces that contribute to this time, which was a very violent time in Texas history. And the German settlement there is a huge German settlement near San Antonio. And, you know, I mean, I thought that she did a really good job giving us a glimpse of that part of Texas at that time. And I traveled in that part of Texas, and her description of the land is just right on the money.
And I was reading that Jiles doesn't use quotation marks because it says it cages the words, which I thought, you know, that's kind of a kind of a cool way of thinking about it. So she's if you have a chance, take a look at her. I put a video up there. She is a cowgirl. I've got to say, you know, she's into horses, and she lives on a ranch outside of San Antonio, and this is her life. She's taken a lot from what her life is like in Texas. So
I think she was really interested in the psychology of children who were abducted by Americans. It happened over. I mean, in my own family back generations ago, there were young girls who were abducted by some of the Native American tribes from Montreal. And it's a whole story behind that. But some return and don't do very well, and some never choose to return, even though their families want them back. But on page, if you read the book, on page 211, there's a note from the author where she refers to a book called The Captured, which delves into the psychology of these children. I think that is one of her real interests.
That was a really interesting part, I will admit to that. The psychology and how this young girl, Joanna, actually kind of adopted the facial expressions and the mannerisms of the Native Americans, and so it was hard for her to go back to a more animated society.
It begs the question, what has a stronger influence on us, nature or nurture?
Mm-hmm.
Just exactly that, Nancy, you know, that she adopted the facial and the nonverbal expressions, and her thoughts at different times were more of her captors than when she lived with her family. Always an interesting
And it was
question.
interesting too. It was interesting why the children chose to live with the Indians rather than go home. You know, I wonder, A, why that is, and B, why the Indians, well, it's probably obvious why they killed the adults, but why didn't they kill the children? Why did they bring them home with them?
Well, they did kill her sister, and it was pretty brutal. You know, the description of the killing of the sister.
Wasn't the family that she went to, the Kiowa family that she went to, childless?
I was going to say that is often the case, that they abduct these children to give them to some of their own people who have no children.
Okay.
I thought it said she had brothers and sisters, but maybe I'm wrong about that, within the tribe, when she was talking about, when she was standing at the river and thinking about going across or something, that it mentioned more family than just a mother and father, but maybe I'm wrong about that.
I love the shootout with the dimes.
Oh, yeah, that was funny.
Clever.
Mm-hmm.
And then she wanted to scalp him.
Yeah,
Which,
that was,
No scalping allowed. Not today. It was Wednesday.
yeah, there are some great quotes throughout the book too, because she is a poet, and her language is so musical almost. Yeah, in the beginning, I was tired. I was reading it and I was feeling really tired. It made me tired. But then as I got to page maybe 40, 50, it picked up, and I was like, oh, this is a really good story. in the beginning, just, I think sometimes it takes a while to get into a story, especially one you're not used to, this kind of writing, this kind of style. But she's a very prolific author. I mean, she just came out with a new book called Simon the Fiddler that keeps going off the shelf. So it'll be interesting to see this now as a film too. One of her books becoming a film. Has anyone read any of her other books, like Enemy of the Women and all that? She has. Anyone? No.
I haven't even heard of her.
No, but
I have
Yeah.
never heard there. So this,
And I wonder if she's more popular, like in Texas, if she's like, you hear her, certain authors are more popular in certain areas. I had really not ever heard of her either. And this is a National Book Award finalist. And I remember when it came out, it was very popular and it was going off the shelf. And I kind of looked at it and went, I wonder what that's about. But News of the World, and it really isn't, I don't know. One person wrote about it's going into a movie with Tom Hanks, and they're saying, can you possibly change the name of it? Because it really doesn't give the right impression of what this is about. And I don't know, what do you think? There's supposedly two, there's a literal meaning, News of the World, he reads it, and there's supposed to be another meaning. Did anyone get anything else out of that title, News of the World?
well, I think what they mean by, first of all, he's reading from all these different newspapers and educating these people, but also News of the World. You're talking about different, like the Kiowas, and I mean, news. I mean, your information of all these different characters and all these different places in Texas. So it's all of this is, I think, news. It's news of and how they collaborate together. So I think that's what she's meaning by News of the World. It's these different lifestyles coming together also, along with the news.
I thought it was clever. I thought it was clever. I don't always want the book to. Oftentimes, the cover or the name is interesting to me. I think of the book On the Corner of Bitter and Sweet. That was just a really neat cover, and I was interested in the book because of the cover and just the name, and then how the story played into the Corner of Bitter and Sweet. So I like the name. I thought, News of the World, what is this going to be about? And so then I thought it was kind of neat how the story unfolded to be, like you said, Marcia, news of the world, of their time. That there were many different cultures and races that lived together and were not necessarily harmonious. Britt knew that he would never be able to return this girl to her family in San Antonio through the travels, that here's a black man with a white girl. He saw the prejudice. He saw what life was like at that time. And that's a mirror to our time right now. I mean, much of this, I think, mirrors our time. What's politically correct, what's not politically correct, prejudice, all of that. I thought it was very timely.
I agree.
Yeah, I thought, it's funny how when you're reading a book, names just kind of leave you. And he was an important character, and I'm kind of mad at myself that I forgot his name, because he really set the tone of the story, showing how his feelings towards this girl, he had her for a while, and knew that the captain could take, because the captain is a good person. I mean,
and people viewed him that way.
Yeah. And I think even his, he's a good person, and he's a performer too. And the way like Tom Hanks, when we think of Tom Hanks, he's that fun, loving guy. He entertains us. He's like the perfect captain. And the captain is so like, he's a good performer. You know, he dresses a certain way and talks a certain way, he has his light, and people enjoy that. And it was, yeah, I don't know where I'm going, but.
The minor characters, the characters that she doesn't really, that she gives a glimpse to, are very important. You've mentioned Britt, but one of the most important characters, I think, is Doris, the wife of the fiddler, the Irish woman, who totally accepts this kid. And she talks about her being, when you talk about the psychology of these children, she says she's not real, but she's not real. She really tries to get everybody to just leave her alone. And the fact that she won't eat off a dinner plate, it's like, okay, she won't. But Doris, I think the minor characters are really, they contribute an awful lot. And they don't get expanded upon. If the story's
Yeah.
girl, but there are people that play into it. And I thought, yeah, I enjoyed this book because I thought it was timely. I really did. I thought the main thrust was tolerance, acceptance. And the captain certainly does, because he's, as you said, he's a performer. He's accepted. He's a big deal when he comes into town. But who does he hang out with? He hangs out with a fiddler. Who does he know? He knows the black cowboys. He knows everybody. He's accepted on all levels, and he accepts on all levels.
This is Maureen. I really, I can't see anybody, of course, but I really, I enjoyed the book. And I think because this author is a poet, her use of language is very precise. And that's interesting, woven into a story. So the fact that you might not remember a character, because in a traditional writing style, maybe that character would be developed more. You know what I'm saying? But she just kind of plops something in that is powerful without a lot of background. It's just the way her writing style. I just thought that was interesting. And I didn't know she was a poet until I finished the book. I started looking more information about her. But I really enjoyed it. And Westerns are not my thing. I kind of did an eye roll when I looked at the book jacket. But it expanded my horizons. And that's how I evaluate a book. If I'm able to kind of go beyond what I think is a good book, and then I end up really liking it, and learning something from it, I really judge it as a good read.
I agree.
And usually when we read books, they're beyond 200 pages. I mean, she was concise because she's a poet, and she didn't put a lot of information in about the characters. She just threw it in, like the guy that she ended up marrying, was his name Tom Kelly? I forget. She threw him in a couple of instances, and he was the one that gave her candy from his pocket. And then, yeah, so, but she introduced him, and yeah, I'd like to know how she writes. I mean, does she start out with the outline, or does she, she probably is, the way she develops, it's different. It must be. So, yeah.
Captain. Oh, I thought the captain would go back and get involved with Mrs. Gannon, maybe.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And he went back, and she was already involved. I felt bad for him at that point. Talked about his wife.
I did too.
So,
I did
so
too.
often that he missed his wife, and I thought, okay, here we go. And no,
I thought the
no,
same
no
thing.
little happy family unit.
Yeah, but he lived with his daughters, and
Did.
so I think that kind of made him, but to think that he was 70 when he's, the book states that he was 70 when he started this. So, and that's a pretty elderly gentleman for that time to be able to do what he did. I mean, the travel and all of the things. So that was very interesting. And then he lived longer. So this guy lived a very long life in that time frame. People didn't live to 85 or whatever that time was in that time, in the in the 1800s particularly. So that was interesting.
So nice of you, Marcia, to clarify that his age of 70 was very old for that time, and not just. Very nice of you, friend.
Well, it was for that time. I'm able to.
For now, 70 is
giving you a hard time.
60, so
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and if I would travel by horse from the top of, from the top of Texas to San Antonio, I mean, that was quite a trek that they did. It was, that was a big deal. Yeah.
And I like that they had the map in the
Love the
book,
map.
which is another to follow the trail of. Did y'all notice in the front part of the book on the end pages? Yeah, they have the map.
It's an absolutely beautiful part of Texas. And if you ever have the chance to go in the spring when the flowers are blooming, it's just absolutely gorgeous. It's bluebonnet and Indian paintbrush, and it's rolling hills, and it's full of water and brooks. It's beautiful. I was absolutely delighted. And what got me there was another book that described it, that described the scenery, and that was about the Comanches. So, and they were, well, nobody was real friendly to anybody in those time periods. They did not get along with each other at all.
No. Just FYI, if my computer is on low, so if I die, I die. And so if I go away, it's because my computer died.
Well, you can come in here. I'll put my mask on.
Nah, that's all right. I gotta go to work anyway, so I will just excuse myself and go to work. But yeah, no, that's fine.
Yeah. It's the relationship of Captain and Johanna really goes through lots of changes, and she didn't like him in the beginning, and you knew she liked him a lot. Well, I think that the big change was the shootout. But after the shootout, she had this new respect for him, and he had a new respect for her that he hadn't before. But I like that when the Kiowa were in the trees, and she could have yelled out, "Hey, come help me," in the language, and she didn't betray him. I think that was a turning point in the book of their relationship. So, and then to drop her off and know these people, I was so glad that guy gave him a heads up, like, these people are not nice people.
Yeah, they're not.
Because if he hadn't, would he have then watched so carefully? Like at the celebration, he watched how they intermingled with people, and they didn't. And then he worried about leaving her. Yeah, I was so glad it came back for her.
Lawyer about adopting her even before, right?
Yeah.
Isn't that what happened?
Yeah.
Lawyer.
After.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I think the Irish woman wanted to adopt her, didn't she? She said, I think there was like, I think there was the question of adopting her along the way. Other people questioned it. And he said, you know, she was promised to her family and he needed to bring her all the way. Yeah, I think that's,
Her
I don't
aunt and
know.
uncle were ill-suited to accept her. And her aunt and uncle were harsh people, but they also could have, you know, really resented her because she was the only one who lived. The rest of her family was brutally murdered. She came back looking like a Kiowa. She came back acting like a Kiowa. I mean, there's a whole complex relationship. Don't get me wrong. I don't think the aunt and uncle were nice people, but I think they were also victims in a way too, that they didn't know how to accept this or deal with it. They were just ill-suited to it, which is really interesting because we're so concerned, and we day and age, the involvement we have with care and concern for children. It's just kind of interesting to see a character like Doris Fleischman who really cared about that child. I mean, and you know, it's a very different time.
Well, but I think the one telling thing about the German aunt and uncle, the first thing they asked is, or he asked is, do you have receipts for the money I sent you? Do you have you bought that wagon? I mean, he didn't care. How is she? Oh my God, it was, you know.
They were very harsh people. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah,
Well,
and then how they treated the nephew.
Yeah.
The nephew ran off. He didn't want to have anything to do with them. Yeah. So
even before she came, they were not nice people. So it wasn't that she was, you know, that she reminded them of anything. They were just not nice. And and you said, there are bullet holes in the wagon and blah blah blah. I mean, he was assessing his investment more so than, and the child was an investment because the child was just going to be labor. That's all.
Which is the way a lot of people looked at children. I mean, if you had a farm, the children you had, the better off you were because you had more hands that would work. So there's, again, this whole evolvement of how children, you know, we begin to care about them. We see that they need to be nurtured. But again, Doris Fleischman was someone who saw that a child needed to be nurtured. Again, I'm not defending the aunt and uncle. I think they were jerks. But I think that there were more people like the aunt and uncle at that time than the aunt and uncle, you know.
should I go through some of our questions here?
Sure.
All right. All right. Did anyone like the ending? I loved that. It was nice. Often.
What was interesting at the ending is they traveled through, I mean, it was more of her lifestyle, traveling. They traveled and they traveled through Texas and did these things together. And I think that was fitting her lifestyle a lot rather than one town, one spot with those social rules per se, because they traveled.
I thought that took a very long time to get to the end, and then it wrapped up really fast. And in my opinion, it was the editor decided, oh, that's enough pages, we're done. Because she really was very plotting and methodical through most of it, and then the end just went like fast.
Yeah.
Well, I think that was purposeful because she wanted everyone to know this is, you know, like this is how it all ends for everyone. You know, here it is. And I think it was important that she gets to his death because he's sent away with the message, and which is he's buried because he wanted to be buried with the message sent over to the other side, and that was his favorite part of his life, is being a messenger of news, a messenger in the war. He loved being the messenger. And she needed to get to that part, and so because of that, she had to tell everything. I mean, she could have ended it of him capturing or him taking her and adopting her, and then be done. He didn't have to marry her off and all that, but she needed to get to his end. Do you think that's? I mean, that's my opinion. I think that's why she wrapped it up like that. But I like sometimes a book when it gets all wrapped up. That's maybe me needing good news. And I like that once he had adopted her, that she became his dime collector. I thought that was cool.
Yeah.
You know, she traveled with him around, and yeah, just a cool little relationship. Let's see. Anyone have any other comments about it? There's some really nice quotes in the story. Did anyone have a favorite quote from the story? There was one about, well, the messenger into his when he died, and then there was a quote about the bones of the Kiowa. Did anyone remember any quote that they want to share?
I don't.
No. Okay.
I remember that there was something that was said that I thought was really good, but I don't remember what it was at the moment. I have to go back and look at the book. But I remember when he quoted something, I thought, well, that's really good. I should remember that.
Yeah.
But I didn't, and now I don't have the book, and it's gone.
I know. And I am going to, there was some really good ones. And if I didn't have such technical difficulty, I would have had it pulled up and opened for you. But I'm pulling up my mail right now because I mailed myself the quotes that I liked. So,
maybe that's what I need to do in the future.
Yeah.
I mail myself things all the time. Because then the first thing I do is open mail, and I say, oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah.
I didn't read this one. I'm sorry. I was a bad book clubber this month. That's why I'm pretty quiet.
It's okay. And I can't find it.
But I did just read, if you guys have extra time, I did just read American Dirt, and it was really good. If you haven't read it yet, it's really like sad in parts and like shocking, but I thought it was really good.
What was the name, Jess?
American Dirt.
American Dirt.
It's about a mother and a son who are making their way to the United States because of some pretty violent things that happened to their family.
I read it too, and it's very powerful. Yeah.
Super powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I passed it on to a friend, and she said she couldn't read it. She said I would have nightmares. Oh. So it really is a book that you have a visceral reaction to, and I couldn't put it down.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what this says about me, but
no, I mean, me too. I liked it. I liked it because I thought it was well written. The content was hard to get through, but.
Okay, I found my quotes. Okay, I'm going to read this one and then see what you think. Life was not safe, and nothing could make it so, neither fashionable dresses nor bank accounts. The baseline of human life was courage. Isn't that beautiful? Yeah. That is what life's about. I mean, even today, it's not about your bank account and how you look. It's about what kind of person you are. And I think that was good. And
And that's poetry. That's, that's
it's
her
poetry.
poetry
Yeah.
coming out. Yes. Beautiful. Yeah.
And some people were born unsupplied with a human conscience, and those people needed killing.
That's so true.
That's a very acceptable quote in its time. In 1870, that's very acceptable. But I think the sentiment of it is I understand the sentiment of it, but that is so unacceptable in our time.
Oh yeah. You can't say that.
But you could in 1870 and not.
Yeah.
Very different.
Maybe life is just carrying news, surviving to carry the news. Maybe we have just one message, and it's delivered to us when we are born, and we are never sure what it says. It may have nothing to do with us personally, but it must be carried by hand through a life, all the way, and at the end, handed over sealed. Oh, I think that's a beautiful
I love
quote
that.
too.
I think that was the one that I like too. That we may not be aware of the message that's planted on our heart as we're born, but that there is a message for us to carry and share with others, whatever that is, kindness and love, compassion, understanding. I like that quote.
But then wouldn't that make all of us messengers? And that's what he was all his life, was a messenger.
Yeah. Whoever had this book put like these little tiny marks at anything that was really good. And the first couple, I was like, what is that? Oh, it was an accidental pencil mark. And then I noticed it was just this little tiny mark. And then it was at all the really good quotes, which I'm like, I'm not erasing it. Which any other time I would erase it. But they had it right on with the quotes. So, yeah. Well, our next book is The Dutch House, and we should be able to get copies for everyone. Again, if you can listen to it, Tom Hanks is the reader, and that will kind of tie in. And the character, the captain, he really likes, he's a reader. And just listening to, he's going to be the reader in the movie, and listening to Tom Hanks read that book, he is a good reader. So listening to it, it's fun to hear him speak. So if you can listen to the audio, try to. But it's a great story. I think everyone's going to like it. And when we meet next time.
Wait, Janine, I'm confused. Tom Hanks is reading The Dutch House?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah. So if you can listen to it, if you have an Audible account, or you can get the libraries. I looked at the hold list for The Dutch House, and it's really long, the audio and the ebook. I didn't look at RB Digital. I'll have to take a look at that. But he's really does a great job reading it, and it's just hearing him and the way he's reading. Then I kept thinking of the captain, thinking of Back of the Dutch House, and that he's going to be the captain. And it's perfect because he's a good reader. And it's like he believed that story the way he was reading it. So The Dutch House is really a good book. I think you all like it. And when you come to, when we meet next time, if you can bring some ideas of books that you've read. Jess just suggested American Dirt. So we can put together a year's worth of books for our book club. I will also have us that'll I will put together from recommendations from Reese. She's right on with things. I'm Reese and NPR. I look at Oprah. She's on, sometimes she's right on and sometimes she's not. So I take a look and I'll put those together for us too. So we can have some discussion about it. But yeah, so good talking to everyone and talking about News of the World. It was a good read, and I'm glad you all, most of you liked it.
Janine,
Yeah.
before we conclude, I have a question. Will you send us a copy of that list prior to the book club?
Sure.
Thank you.
Sure. Yeah, and then we can discuss it. Yeah,
Thank you.
that sounds good. So any final thoughts about our book or our next book? Anyone else have already read Dutch House?
I read it. I listened to Tom Hanks read it. It was excellent. And I think anyone who, and I agree, he just fits the part so well of Captain Kidd. And when he read the Dutch House, you could just, it was just very, very, he just reads really, really well. It was excellent.
Well, thank you for this book. I thought it was really worthy to get to know a new author.
Yeah.
Has
Yeah.
anybody read, I think you mentioned this earlier, but I didn't remember the answer, any of her other works? Has anybody recommend any of her others? The Enemy Woman, Stormy Weather, any of those? I'm just looking at the other things she's written, but
so in the character Doris,
has anybody read any?
Yeah,
her others?
Doris's friend is the fiddler. Is that his name, Simon? Because her next book is Simon the Fiddler. Does anyone remember what the fiddler's name was?
I don't remember.
No, I don't.
Because her newest book is Simon the Fiddler. Maybe there's a connection between, again, if I had the ebook, I could just search so quickly. There's some good reasons for doing ebooks, but that's her newest book, Simon the Fiddler. And if I find the answer to that, I'll put it on our Facebook page if it has a connection to this book or if it's a standalone. So,
I just wanted
okay,
to,
everyone. So we'll see you. It's at the very end of the month of August, we'll probably be doing it as a Zoom still because I don't see it. Yeah, Jessica say it sounds pretty. Our numbers increase to use. They're not having any library programming, so.
Well, and actually, Janine, I wanted to jump in and say we've got a great August plan of virtual programs. So we've got, I guess it's our armchair travel month, and so we've got some programs we put together. We've got a Hoopla program that kind of covers all of the tools that you can use to plan future trips with videos and kind of pulling some of our favorite resources on Hoopla. That's August 4th. And then on the 11th, I'm hosting a Travel Oddities and Roadside Wonders with some tools that I've used to kind of build some unique, fun trips. Janine is doing on the 18th. Well, the dates are all online, but she's doing how to travel for the world for free. And then we also have a gentleman, Janine's friend, that's doing the Boundary Waters, how to plan your trip to the Boundary Waters. So August is going to be a fun month full of either travel virtually or plan a future trip.
Okay. Janine, I looked up Simon the Fiddler, and this is what it says. The critically acclaimed best-selling author of News of the World and Enemy of the People returns to Texas in this atmospheric story set at the end of the Civil War about an itinerant fiddler player and a ragtag band of musicians with whom he travels trying to make a living, and the charming young Irish lass who steals his heart. And it lists him as Simon Bodwin or Bodine. So I don't know. I thought it was Simon Fleischer I thought he was Doris.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I was wondering. It must be completely separate, but it's that same
era,
that same land. Yeah. Well, good. Okay. So if you want Simon the Fiddler, let me know. It's
Is the library open?
Too. The library's open. So our hours are on. Yeah, our hours are Monday noon to 5. Tuesday, 1 until 6. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, 10 until 2. And Saturday, 10 until 1. And if you ever want a book checked out to you to be put on the cart, I can do that. And Jess puts those out first thing in the morning at 8-ish, and then we pull them in at night. So if you don't want to come in the building, we have that option where we'll check the book out to you and put it on the cart. So that's there for you. Okay. And let me know if you need any books. I'm available.
Thanks, Janine. Thanks, Jess.
Okay.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Have a good month. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Have a good day.
Bye.
Thank you.